Deep beneath the earth, where shadows whisper and the air hums with the weight of eternity, a throne stands in a hall of endless echoes. Here, the fate of every soul is weighed, measured, and decided by a figure whose name alone chills the blood: Enma, the king of hell. In Japanese mythology, he is the unyielding judge, the sovereign of the underworld, and the keeper of a realm so vast and terrifying it is divided into 8 levels, each more gruesome than the last. Picture a place where the wicked are not merely punished but transformed by their suffering, where every sin has its own uniquely brutal consequence. This is not just a tale of damnation, it's a mirror held up to human nature, revealing what happens when morality collapses and darkness takes hold. What makes Enma's realm so chillingly fascinating isn't just the brutality of its punishments, it's the precision behind them. Each of the 8 hells is meticulously designed to reflect the crimes of those condemned there. Think of it as a cosmic scale where every action in life tips the balance toward redemption or ruin. But who was Enma before he became the dreaded ruler of this domain? How did Japanese mythology weave his story into the fabric of their beliefs about justice and the afterlife? And what secrets lie hidden in the twisted corridors of his underworld waiting to be uncovered? This journey isn't just about exploring a myth, it's about confronting the universal questions that have haunted humanity for centuries. What awaits us after death? How do cultures across time and space imagine divine justice? And what can these ancient stories teach us about the choices we make today? As we descend into the 8 levels of hell, guided by the unflinching hand of Enma, prepare to witness a vision of the afterlife so vivid, so unnervingly detailed, it will linger in your mind long after the tale ends. The gates are open, the judge is waiting, all that remains is to step inside. Before the underworld knew him as Enma, before his stern gaze became the last sight of the wicked, this fearsome judge began his journey far beyond Japan's shores. His story stretches back to ancient India, where he first emerged as Yama, the Hindu god of death, a figure so primordial that even the earliest Vedic hymns whispered his name with reverence. But as Buddhism spread across Asia, Yama crossed mountains and seas, his identity shifting like shadows under a flickering torch. By the time he reached Japan, he had become Enma-o, a deity reshaped by new beliefs, yet still carrying the weight of his original purpose, to stand as the ultimate arbiter of souls. What makes Enma so compelling isn't just his role, it's the duality he embodies. In Japanese folklore, he isn't merely a punisher, he's a mirror reflecting the consequences of every life lived. Picture him seated in his silent court, clad in robes as dark as the void, clutching the ledger that records every human deed. To his left, a demon holds a mirror that strips away lies, forcing the dead to confront their own sins. To his right, a massive scale tips with the weight of karma, each grain of misdeed tipping the balance toward salvation or torment. This isn't blind wrath, it's a system of brutal precision, where even the smallest kindness might lighten a soul's sentence. Yet Enma's roots in Buddhism add layers to his justice. Unlike Western visions of hellfire and damnation, his realm operates on a chilling logic. Suffering isn't eternal, but a forge for redemption. Souls cycle through the 8 hells not as endless prisoners, but as students of their own failings. A thief might spend centuries drowning in a river of molten copper, not because Enma delights in agony, but because the pain burns away greed. A liar's tongue might be ripped out again and again, not as mere punishment, but as a grotesque lesson in truth. But here's where Japanese folklore twists the tale even further. Over centuries, local legends painted Enma as more than a cosmic bureaucrat. He became a cultural touchstone, invoked by parents to scold misbehaving children, and woven into festivals where paper lanterns symbolically guided lost souls to his court. Farmers left offerings to appease him during droughts, and actors in no plays donned his scowling mask to embody divine judgment. This blending of the sacred and the everyday reveals something profound. Enma isn't just a myth. He's a warning etched into the collective heart of a society, a reminder that every action echoes beyond the grave. Perhaps the most fascinating detail lies in the cracks of his stern facade. Some regional tales whisper that even Enma isn't immune to mercy. In one story, a humble candle maker, wrongly condemned, so moves the king with his patience that Enma bends the rules, offering him rebirth as a fortunate noble. In another, a fox spirit's cunning amuses him enough to lessen her punishment. These glimpses of flexibility hint at a deeper truth. Enma's justice, for all its terror, is never arbitrary. It's a cosmic balancing act where even the judge must occasionally reckon with the messy, unpredictable nature of souls. So when we ask who Enma truly is, the answer isn't simple. He's a borrowed god refined by centuries of belief. He's the unblinking eye of karma, and yet occasionally a flicker of compassion in the dark. Most of all, he's a testament to humanity's endless quest to make sense of life's greatest mystery, what awaits us when the final breath leaves our lips. And as we'll soon see, the 8 levels of hell he oversees are far more than pits of suffering. They're a dark reflection of our own world, where every sin, every virtue writes its own punishment. The Japanese underworld, known as Jigoku, is not a single pit of fire but a vast, intricate realm where justice unfolds with terrifying precision. Unlike the fiery, monolithic hell of Western tradition, Jigoku is a labyrinth of suffering, meticulously organized into 8 major hells, each with 16 smaller sub-realms, where punishments are tailored to the sins of the damned. This isn't a place of arbitrary torment. It's a cosmic courtroom where every soul's fate is decided by the unflinching logic of karma. In Western hell, sinners burn together in a shared inferno. But in Jigoku, a murderer won't face the same flames as a liar. Their punishments are as distinct as their crimes. At the heart of this system is the belief that actions in life ripple into the afterlife. Imagine karma as an invisible ledger recording every deed, thought, and intention. When a soul stands before Enma's court, this ledger is opened and the weight of their life tips the scales. A kind-hearted farmer might find temporary respite in a lesser realm, while a corrupt official could be plunged into the deepest hell where rivers of molten iron erase the memory of greed. But here's the crucial difference: Jigoku isn't eternal. Unlike the Christian concept of hell as a final destination, Japanese mythology offers a grim but finite purgatory. Souls suffer until their karma is exhausted, then they're reborn, carrying the lessons of their torment into a new life. The layers of Jigoku unfold like a nightmare's geography. At the shallowest level, souls endure punishments that mirror their earthly vices. Gossip screams silently as their tongues are torn out by iron hooks. Thieves run endlessly across fields of blades, their feet shredded with each step. Deeper down, the hells grow more grotesque. In the realm of screaming, the air itself is fire, and every breath scalds the lungs. Deceivers are crushed under mountains of ice, their bodies frozen mid-plea. And at the lowest level, the worst offenders, those who betrayed family, murdered without remorse, are trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth within the hell itself, their bodies torn apart by demons only to reform and suffer anew. What makes Jigoku so haunting isn't just its brutality, but its chilling sense of order. Demons here aren't mindless torturers, they're bureaucrats of pain, ensuring each punishment fits the crime. There's even a hell for those who wasted food, where the damned are force-fed molten gold, and another for monks who broke their vows, their bodies slowly devoured by flames that burn just enough to prolong the agony. This specificity reflects a core tenet of Buddhist thought: no action, no matter how small, is without consequence. Yet woven into this terrifying tapestry are threads of unexpected hope. Some legends speak of hidden paths where sincere repentance can shorten a soul's sentence. Others tell of bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who descend into the hells to offer comfort or even negotiate with Enma for a soul's release. These stories reveal a profound truth about Jigoku. It's not just a place of punishment but of transformation. The suffering serves a purpose, to scour away the flaws of the past, preparing the soul for a wiser, kinder rebirth. In the end, Jigoku is more than a myth. It's a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting the consequences of every choice. Whether you see it as literal truth or symbolic lesson, its message is clear. The afterlife isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we create, one decision at a time. The 8 levels of hell in Japanese mythology form a chilling descent, a carefully structured abyss where every rung downward marks a darker, more excruciating form of justice. Picture them as a spiraling staircase into the earth, each step etched with the sins that condemn souls to its depths. At the top, the punishments are almost bearable, if such a word can be used in hell. But by the lowest level, the torment defies imagination, designed to strip away not just the body, but the very essence of wrongdoing. The first level, called the Hell of Revival, might almost sound merciful compared to what lies below. Here, those who committed minor violence, brawlers, impulsive killers, are condemned to relive their crimes in an endless loop. Imagine striking someone in a moment of rage, only to feel the blow reverberate back 1,000 times, your own fists turning against you. But this is just the surface. The second level, the Black Rope Hell, tightens its grip on thieves and deceivers. Souls are bound with scorching chains, their skin blistering as they're dragged across plains of jagged stone, a literal unraveling of the knots they tied in life. Deeper still lies the crushing hell, reserved for those who destroyed lives through greed or neglect. Picture being buried under an avalanche of boulders, your bones splintering under the weight, only for the rocks to lift and crush you anew, a grotesque echo of how the wealthy might trample the poor. The fourth level, the moaning hell, swallows those who reveled in others' suffering. Their voices, once used to mock or manipulate, are now trapped in endless screams, swallowed by walls that amplify their agony. But the true horror begins in the fifth level, the Great Burning Hell. Arsonists, tyrants, anyone who wielded fire as a weapon now writhe in lakes of molten metal, their flesh searing away only to regrow and burn again. Above them, the sixth level, the Hell of Boiling Blood, awaits murderers. Rivers of scalding crimson pull them under, their sins made tangible as the very liquid they spilled becomes their punishment. The seventh level, the Hell of Ultimate Suffering, is where morality fractures entirely. Here, the worst of humanity, those who betrayed kin, desecrated sacred bonds, are flayed alive by hurricanes of razors, their bodies rebuilt just long enough to feel the blades again. And finally, the eighth level, the uninterrupted hell, no rebirth, no respite. Souls here are frozen in perpetual torment, their crimes so unspeakable that even karma cannot wash them clean. What makes this hierarchy so unsettling isn't just the escalating brutality, it's the chilling logic behind it. Each hell mirrors the sins it punishes, turning the damned into living reflections of their misdeeds. A liar doesn't merely burn, they choke on the words they twisted. A corrupt ruler doesn't just suffer, they drown in the consequences of their hoarded power. This isn't random cruelty, it's justice distilled to its most absolute form. Yet even here there's a grim poetry. The deeper one goes, the more the punishments strip away not just the body but the illusions of the soul. By the eighth level, there's nothing left to hide behind, no excuses, no lies, just the raw, unfiltered truth of what a person chose to be, and that may be the most terrifying punishment of all. Even in the shallowest depths of hell, suffering finds its own cruel rhythm. The Hell of Revival, Takatsu Jigoku, is where the damned confront the weight of seemingly minor sins, petty theft, white lies, moments of careless cruelty. These are the transgressions society might overlook, but Enma's legend never forgets. Here, the punishment is deceptively simple: death, rebirth, repeat. Souls are stabbed, crushed, or drowned by demonic executioners, only to gasp back to life seconds later, their wounds healed just in time for the cycle to begin anew. What makes this hell so harrowing isn't the physical pain, it's the psychological unraveling. Imagine stealing a loaf of bread to survive, only to spend centuries feeling your ribs crack under the weight of 1,000 stolen meals. Or telling a harmless lie, then enduring eternity with your tongue sliced out, regrown, and sliced again. The torment mirrors the sin's triviality, magnifying it into something unbearable. A pickpocket's fingers might be severed one by one, each regeneration stretching the moment of theft into an endless confession. But there's a twisted logic to this repetition. In life, these sins were fleeting, a moment's lapse, a shrug of conscience. In Tokatsu Jigoku, time stretches them into monuments. The liar who once dismissed their words learns the cost of every syllable. The thief who thought no one would miss a coin discovers how loss compounds. Even the layout of this hell reflects its purpose, a featureless plain where the horizon blurs, denying any sense of progress or escape. Yet amid the brutality, a grim lesson takes shape. Unlike the lower hells where agony drowns all thought, this realm leaves room for reckoning. Souls here aren't just punished, they're forced to remember. Each revival brings a flicker of clarity, a chance to trace the chain from minor sin to unending consequence. It's a hell designed not just to wound, but to teach. And for the rare soul who truly comprehends their failing, legends whisper of a loophole. Genuine remorse can thin the walls between realms, allowing prayers to pierce through to the living. But such mercy is fragile. For most, the cycle grinds on, a wheel turning without end. The hell of revival proves a terrifying truth: no sin is too small to cast a shadow. And sometimes the lightest touch leaves the deepest scar. The hell of revival doesn't just punish, it reveals. Beneath its cyclical torment lies a profound reflection of Buddhist teachings on the nature of suffering, specifically the concept of samsara, the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Every repetition in this hell mirrors the trapped soul's inability to break free from their own patterns, much like how unenlightened beings remain bound to worldly desires. The demons here aren't merely executioners, they're grotesque teachers, forcing the damned to confront the weight of actions they once dismissed as insignificant. A whispered rumor might seem harmless in life, but in Tokatsu Jigoku it echoes endlessly, each revival a hammer striking the same brittle spot until even the soul cracks under the realization: no action exists in isolation. This level's symbolism bleeds into Japanese art and literature with startling clarity. Medieval scrolls depict it not as a pit of fire, but as a vast, mist-shrouded plain where figures stumble in an endless loop, their faces twisted with dawning comprehension. In the tale of the hike, warriors who died with arrogance unshaken are said to linger here, reliving their final battles until humility seeps into their bones. Even traditional no-theater masks capture the essence of this hell: faces frozen between agony and epiphany, mouths slightly open as if perpetually gasping back to life. But perhaps the most striking cultural impact lies in how Tokatsu Jigoku shaped everyday morality. Parents warned children that even a stolen sweet could tether them to this realm, while merchants hung charms to ward off the small sins that might tip Enma's scales. The hell's imagery seeped into proverbs: one lie today, 1,000 tongues torn tomorrow. Even festivals like Obon, where ancestors' spirits return, carry whispers of this realm, lanterns guiding souls not just to peace, but away from revival's relentless wheel. What makes this level uniquely unsettling is its intimacy. The deepest hells punish monsters, but Tokatsu Jigoku waits for us, for anyone who's ever cut corners, ignored consequences, or assumed their choices faded into nothingness. It's a mirror held up to the most human of failings, proving that in Enma's court, even the smallest darkness casts a long, enduring shadow. Descending past the ceaseless revivals of Takatsu Jigoku, the air thickens with the stench of scorched flesh and the metallic tang of dread. This is Kokujo Jigoku, the hell of black rope where justice takes the form of searing bonds that carve deeper than any blade. Here, the damned aren't merely punished, they're ritualistically unmade. The ropes themselves are woven from the essence of their sins, each fiber a knotted record of violence, betrayal, or broken oaths. Imagine a cord that doesn't just restrain, but remembers digging into flesh with the weight of every blow struck in anger, every promise shattered for greed. The symbolism is as precise as the torment. In Japanese tradition, ropes signify connection, binding agreements, sacred vows, the threads of trust between people. But in Kokujo Jigoku, these bonds are perverted. The black ropes glow like embers, their heat intensifying with the soul's resistance. A warlord who once commanded armies might find himself trussed like a hog, his limbs cinched tighter with each remembered act of tyranny. A fraudulent merchant whose contracts were lies inked on paper now chokes on the phantom noose of her own deceit. Even the layout of this hell reinforces its lesson. A labyrinth of narrow gorges where the walls themselves are threaded with smoldering cords, ensuring no escape from the tangled consequences of one's actions. But the true horror lies in the craft of the punishment. Demons here aren't mindless brutes, they're artisans of anguish. They weave the ropes around joints and pressure points, ensuring the pain crescendos with poetic cruelty. A wife who poisoned her husband might endure cords coiled around her throat and wrists, replicating the stealthy grip of her crime. A soldier who slaughtered prisoners could find his torso bound in intricate patterns, each loop a reenactment of the lives he cut short. The ropes don't just burn, they educate, forcing the soul to feel every ounce of suffering they once dismissed. Cultural echoes of this hell ripple far beyond myth. Medieval kabuki plays often depicted villains dragged offstage by shadowy figures wielding blackened cords, a direct nod to Kokujo Jigoku's imagery. Even today, the phrase Kokujo no Nawa, black ropes bind, lingers in Japanese as a warning against the snares of dishonesty. But perhaps the most striking parallel lies in the festival of Nagoshi no Ohari, where worshippers pass through giant straw rings to symbolically shed sins. The rite mirrors the hell's central paradox. Ropes can strangle, but they can also purify. What makes this level so unnerving is its intimacy. Unlike the grand spectacles of deeper hells, Kokujo Jigoku operates on a human scale. The ropes tighten in time with the rhythm of breath, the sizzle of flesh almost conversational. There's no roaring fire, no epic landscape, just the quiet, inescapable truth that every betrayal, every act of violence was never just a moment. It was a knot, and in Enma's realm, every knot must be untied the hard way. The hell of black rope doesn't just exist in ancient texts, it slithers through centuries of Japanese art, its imagery evolving but never losing its visceral punch. One of the earliest depictions appears in the Jigoku Zoshi, a 12th century scroll painted with such gruesome detail that legend claims the artist's brushes dripped real blood. Here, the ropes aren't mere restraints, they're alive, coiling around sinners like serpents, their knots tightening in time with the viewer's pulse. What makes these scrolls remarkable isn't just their horror, it's their intimacy. The damned are rendered with individualized suffering. A samurai's face contorts as cords press into the same spots where his armor once chafed, while a merchant's elaborate bindings mimic the account books he falsified. These aren't generic sinners, they're mirrors of the era's anxieties, reflecting a society obsessed with the consequences of broken trust. By the Edo period, Kokujo Jigoku leaped from parchment to the stage. Kabuki plays transformed its torments into spectacle, with actors using braided black cables that sizzled with staged magic. In the hellish rope of Kamiya Jihei, a jealous lover's suicide becomes a theatrical descent into the realm, his body suspended mid-air by glowing ropes that pull taut as his sins are recited. The audience didn't just watch, they participated, throwing salt to purify themselves when the ropes hissed. Even Bunraku puppetry adapted the hell, with delicate mechanisms making puppet limbs twist unnaturally under invisible binds. These performances weren't mere entertainment, they were communal exorcisms reinforcing social order through shared terror. Modern media strips away the pageantry but sharpens the psychological blade. Anime like Hell Girl reimagines the black ropes as chains dragging victims into voids, while horror films like Quaden frame them as extensions of guilt tightening whenever a character lies. Video games get particularly inventive. In Shin Megami Tensei, demons wield Kokujo Jigoku's ropes as weapons that inflict binding status effects, paralyzing players just as the hell's victims are frozen mid-scream. Even fashion borrows the aesthetic, with designers like Issey Miyake weaving industrial cables into runway pieces that evoke both restraint and rebellion. Yet the most enduring legacy might be in language itself. Phrases like Jigoku no Nawa, Hell's rope, still describe inescapable dilemmas, while corporate scandals are metaphorically unraveled in newspapers with imagery lifted straight from the scrolls. The hell's influence even slithers into psychology. The term Nawashibari trauma describes patients who feel psychologically bound by past actions, their guilt as tangible as Kokujo Jigoku's cords. What makes these depictions so enduring isn't just their shock value, it's their adaptability. The ropes mutate across mediums, but their core lesson remains. Betrayal, once committed, wraps itself around the betrayer. Whether painted on silk or rendered in pixels, the message is clear. Some bonds once formed can't be broken, only endured. If Kokujo Jigoku binds the soul with searing ropes, then Shugo Jigoku, the hell of crushing, reduces it to pulp. This third level isn't about fire or blades, it's about pressure, relentless and inescapable, turning bones to powder beneath the weight of mountains. Here, the greedy and the exploiters learn the literal cost of hoarding. What was taken in life now collapses onto them with multiplied force. Picture a merchant who gouged prices during a famine, now pinned under slabs of gold that melt against his skin. Or a landlord who evicted tenants in winter, his ribs cracking under avalanches of ice and stone. Every boulder, every crushing mass mirrors the burdens they placed on others, their sins made tangible as tectonic force. The imagery isn't random. In Buddhist tradition, greed is often depicted as a weight, a drag on the spirit that prevents enlightenment. Shugo Jigoku takes this metaphor and forges it into visceral reality. The damned aren't just punished, they're flattened by the very things they coveted. Jewelers who sold fake gems might find their spines pressed under piles of molten quartz. Corrupt officials groan beneath stacks of leaden scrolls, each document heavier than the last. Even the landscape conspires against them. Cliffs shift without warning, ceilings descend like slow guillotines, and the ground itself buckles to squeeze the air from their lungs. But what makes this hell uniquely horrifying is its silence. Unlike the screams of other realms, Shugo Jigoku muffles sound beneath layers of earth. Souls suffocate in quiet, their cries absorbed by stone, just as their victims' pleas might have been ignored in life. Demons here don't cackle, they work methodically, adjusting weights with the precision of accountants balancing ledgers. One legend tells of a moneylender forced to hold up a collapsing temple roof, his arms trembling for centuries under the exact sum he'd swindled from worshippers. The punishment fits the crime with mathematical cruelty. Cultural echoes of this hell are everywhere. Ancient court documents describe corrupt nobles being crushed by the weight of their offenses, while Edo period woodblocks show sinners flattened like scrolls beneath giant seals. Even modern language preserves it. The phrase "shugo no amosa," the heaviness of crushing, describes guilt that physically drags a person down. But perhaps the most striking parallel lies in Japanese folklore's oshagami, paper dolls said to absorb misfortune. When burned, they crumble to ash, a ritual release from life's accumulating burdens, and a tacit acknowledgement of what awaits those who refuse to let go. Jigoku's lesson is blunt but profound. Exploitation doesn't just harm others, it warps the exploiter. Every act of greed distorts the soul, bending it under invisible loads until, in Enma's realm, those loads become crushing truth. And in that final, airless moment beneath the mountain, even the densest mind might grasp the irony. The things we clutch too tightly are what eventually bury us. The crushing weight of Jigoku finds eerie reflections across cultures and centuries, proof that humanity's imagination of divine justice often bends toward similar shapes. Take the Greek myth of Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder uphill for eternity only to watch it tumble back down. On the surface, his punishment seems like a cousin to the hell of crushing, both dealing with endless, futile labor. But look closer, Sisyphus's torment stems from his defiance of the gods, his cunning used to cheat death itself. His boulder isn't just weight, it's the embodiment of his pride, the cosmic punchline to his belief that he could outwit fate. Jigoku's sinners, by contrast, are crushed not for rebellion but for exploitation. Their mountains aren't rolling, they're accumulating, mirroring how greed stacks burdens onto others until the weight collapses inward. Christian purgatory offers another twisted parallel. While not a hell in the traditional sense, it shares Jigoku's focus on purification through suffering. Souls in purgatory endure flames that scour away sin's residue, much like how the crushing hell presses vice from the soul like juice from fruit. Yet purgatory's fire promises eventual ascent to heaven, a mercy absent in Enma's realm until karma is fully balanced. Even the imagery overlaps. Medieval manuscripts depict the greedy in purgatory buried under piles of coin, their mouths stuffed with gold, a visual echo of Japan's greedy merchants pinned beneath molten treasure. Venture into Norse mythology and you'll find Loki bound beneath serpent venom, a different kind of crushing where the weight is liquid agony, each drop a reminder of his betrayal. In Hindu tradition, the demon Hiranyakashipu is torn apart by Vishnu's claws, his body pressed between earth and sky, an explosive version of Jigoku's slow compression. These parallels reveal a universal truth. Cultures separated by continents and millennia still agree on one thing: oppression, greed, the act of pressing others down. These sins demand a punishment that turns the weight back on the sinner. But what sets Jigoku apart is its meticulous personalization. Where Sisyphus's boulder is generic, Enma's mountains are tailor-made. A corrupt judge might suffocate under law scrolls inked with his own false rulings. A hoarder of food during famine could find grain sacks hardening into stone against their ribs. This specificity transforms the hell from a symbolic tableau into a brutal confession, forcing the damned to confront not just punishment, but the exact contours of their moral failings. Perhaps the most striking difference lies in escape. Sisyphus's curse is eternal. No amount of pushing will ever free him. But Jigoku's souls, however dim the hope, can grind their way toward rebirth if they endure long enough to learn. That's the grim grace of Enma's justice. Even the weightiest sins can eventually be lifted. If Jigoku teaches the weight of greed, then Kyokan Jigoku, the hell of screaming, reveals the echo of cruelty. Here, sound is the weapon, not the muffled silence of crushing stone, but a cacophony so vast it becomes its own kind of oblivion. Souls in this fourth level don't just endure fire or ice, they drown in the consequences of their own indifference, their voices joining a chorus of agony they once ignored. Picture a nobleman who turned away from starving peasants, now trapped in a cavern where the walls shriek with the hunger he dismissed, or a torturer who reveled in his victims' cries, now enveloped in a storm of screams, each one his own, amplified 1,000-fold. The torment is diabolically precise. Some regions of this hell burn with blue flames that sear the lungs with every gasped breath, while others freeze souls solid, their bodies encased in ice just thin enough to let them writhe. The dividing line, the nature of their sins. Those who wielded cruelty like a weapon roast alive, their flesh blistering in time with the memories of their victims' final moments. But those who stood by and allowed suffering, the bystanders, the willfully blind, endure the cold, their numbness in life made literal as frost cracks their skin. Both punishments share one feature: the screaming never stops. It reverberates through the bones, a ceaseless reminder that apathy and malice are two sides of the same coin. Cultural echoes of Kyokan Jigoku ripple through Japanese folklore like aftershocks. In no plays, masks of the damned often feature mouths stretched wide in silent howls, a visual nod to this hell's relentless soundscape. The tale of the hike describes fallen warriors dragged here not for battles fought, but for the villages they burned without a second thought, their eternal screams mirroring the wails of the civilians they slaughtered. Even modern idioms carry its shadow. To hear hell's voice means to confront consequences long avoided. But what makes this level uniquely harrowing isn't just the noise, it's the way the screams transform. At first, they're the damned's own voices, raw with panic, but as cycles pass, the tones shift. The cry of a child they ignored surfaces in the din. A beggar's plea they stepped over twists into the rhythm of their torment. The hell doesn't just punish, it reconstructs empathy by forcing sinners to feel the suffering they once tuned out. And perhaps that's the darkest irony of Kyokan Jigoku. In life, these souls close their ears to pain. In death, they become pain's instrument, their voices now part of the very chorus they refuse to hear. The lesson is brutal but clear. Cruelty isn't just measured by what you do, it's counted in the voices you chose to silence. Kyokan Jigoku doesn't just punish the body, it dismantles the mind. What begins as physical torment quickly morphs into something far more insidious: the terror of being trapped forever in a void of your own making. Imagine the moment a soul realizes their screams don't just fill the air, they've become part of the hell's architecture, reverberating back at them like a funhouse mirror of suffering. This is horror stripped down to its most primal form, the fear of being truly, utterly alone, yet never free from the sound of your own anguish. The isolation here isn't just spatial, it's existential. Even surrounded by other damned souls, each voice exists in its own bubble of despair, amplifying rather than alleviating the loneliness. You scream, and the hell screams back, but no one ever listens. Japanese kaiden ghost stories have mined this psychological dread for centuries. Take the classic tale Bancho Sarayashiki, where a servant thrown down a well spends eternity counting dishes in the dark, her voice growing fainter with each repetition. It's Kyokan Jigoku distilled into folklore, the crushing weight of abandonment, the futility of cries for help. Modern horror media twists the knife further. Films like Cairo Pulse feature ghosts trapped in endless loops of their final moments, their wails digitized into static, a technological update to the hell's eternal echoes. Even video games like Fatal Frame use audio cues to unnerve players, with distant sobs that grow louder the closer you get to your doom. But what makes this level's horror so enduring isn't just the sound, it's the perversion of connection. In life, voices bind us, laughter shared, secrets whispered, comfort given. Here, they become weapons, the demon overseers of Kyokan Jigoku don't need racks or blades. They simply twist the natural human need to be heard into an unbreakable circuit of torment. A mother who ignored her child's cries might find herself surrounded by countless versions of that same plea, each one sharper than the last. A corrupt official who silenced protests now drowns in disembodied shouts that somehow still feel directed at him, as if the universe itself has become an accusatory mob. This psychological precision reveals something profound about Japanese concepts of justice. In Western hells, fire and brimstone dominate, external punishments for sins committed. But Kyokan Jigoku operates internally. Its true punishment isn't the pain, it's the realization that every scream you hear is one you could have answered in life but chose not to. That's the twist of the knife. In the end, the voices you feared most were always your own. The difference between Kyokan Jigoku and Daikyokan Jigoku, the hell of great screaming, is like comparing a storm to a hurricane. Both carry thunder, but one obliterates all else in its path. Here, in the fifth circle of Enma's underworld, the screams don't just echo, they reshape reality itself. This is where the architects of suffering meet their masterpiece, a soundscape so violent it liquefies flesh, where every shriek carves deeper than any blade. Souls condemned here aren't just passive victims of noise, they're amplifiers, their torment broadcast across the hell in an endless feedback loop of agony. Take a murderer, for instance. In life, they silence their victim's final cry. Now, that single moment stretches into eternity, their own throat shredding as they're forced to reproduce the sound they once stifled, louder, sharper with each iteration. Or a blasphemer who mocked sacred rites. Their tongue swells to fill their mouth, every attempted scream morphing into distorted prayers they never meant to utter. The cruelty lies in the details. The air here isn't just hot or cold, it vibrates, each molecule tuned to a frequency that resonates with the sinner's specific crime. A warlord who ordered mass executions might find his eardrums pulsing in sync with phantom marching feet, while a poisoner's screams curdle into the gurgles of those they killed. But what truly sets Daikyokan Jigoku apart is its structure. Unlike the chaotic noise of the fourth level, this hell operates with grotesque harmony. Demons here function like conductors, orchestrating the suffering into crescendos that peak at the exact moment a soul nears madness, only to pull back just enough to reset the cycle. Legends speak of a corrupted monk who, after desecrating a temple, spent centuries trapped in a choir of his own making, his voice splitting into dozens of discordant tones that mimicked the hymns he once ruined. Cultural echoes of this hell reverberate in unexpected places. Traditional Jigoku court music features a flute called the hikairiki, whose piercing wail was said to be inspired by the screams of Daikyokan Jigoku, a reminder that even beauty can spring from terror. Modern horror films like Ju-on borrow its auditory dread, using sound design that doesn't just scare but colonizes the listener's mind. Even language preserves its legacy. The phrase Daikyokan no Ko, the voice of great screaming, describes any truth too awful to ignore yet too painful to bear. The lesson of this hell isn't just about volume, it's about inescapability. Where Kyokan Jigoku forced sinners to hear what they'd ignored, Daikyokan Jigoku ensures they become what they'd silenced. There's no covering your ears here, no shutting your eyes, just the inexorable truth that every cry you ever caused, every plea you ever drowned out, was never truly gone. It was only waiting to swallow you whole. Daikyokan Jigoku isn't just a place of punishment, it's a brutal classroom where the screams themselves teach lessons sharper than any scripture. Buddhism's vision of hell isn't about eternal damnation, it's about correction. Here, the consequences of extreme actions aren't just displayed, they're embodied, forcing souls to live out the suffering they once dismissed as abstract. Take the warlord who massacred villages without hesitation. In this hell, his own voice becomes the weapon, each cry recreating the chaos he unleashed, but with one crucial difference: now he feels every ounce of that pain. The message is relentless. Harm multiplied isn't justice, but it is education. This level's moral weight is woven into Buddhist teachings like a warning etched in flame. Ancient texts describe it as the breaking ground, where arrogance and cruelty are shattered so the soul can rebuild. The logic is surgical. If you refuse to hear others in life, you'll spend centuries drowning in the sound of yourself. But there's a paradoxical mercy here. Unlike Western hells where suffering is eternal, Daikyokan Jigoku's torment has an expiration date. The moment the soul truly understands the cost of its actions. A corrupt judge might scream until he recognizes each wail as the voice of an innocent prisoner he condemned. A slanderer's tongue might blister until she grasps how words can flay flesh as cleanly as a knife. Cultural rituals reinforce this lesson. During Obon festivals, some communities burn effigies with mouths stitched shut, a nod to this hell's emphasis on listening. Parents tell children of the Yamabiko, mountain spirits who echo foolish shouts back as warnings. Even modern legal systems echo the principle. Japan's emphasis on restitution over pure punishment mirrors the hell's focus on amends, not just pain. Yet the deepest irony lies in the silence between screams. In those fleeting pauses, the damned confront something far worse than noise, the memory of every moment they could have chosen kindness instead. That's the true deterrent, not the horror of the hell itself, but the crushing realization that it didn't have to be this way. The great screaming doesn't just punish. It reveals the fragile line between cruelty and remorse, and how easily one can become the other when we forget the weight of a single human voice. From the echoing screams of Daikyokan Jigoku, the descent plunges into a realm where sound itself ignites. Welcome to Jontsu Jigoku, the hell of burning heat. Here, fire isn't just punishment, it's a language, a searing dialect that translates every ounce of hatred, every spark of cruelty into an unquenchable blaze. This sixth level isn't merely hot, it's alive with flames that twist into grotesque imitations of their victims' sins. Picture an arsonist who once delighted in watching buildings collapse, now trapped in a forest of charred pillars that crumble and reform around them, each ember whispering the names of those they doomed. Or a ruler who stoked the flames of war, now drowning in rivers of molten bronze that harden around their limbs like armor, only to melt and scald anew. The imagery here is rooted in Japan's own volatile geology, a land where earth breathes fire. Volcanoes like Mount Aso and Sakurajima loom in the cultural consciousness, their eruptions woven into folklore as portals to the underworld. Jontsu Jigoku mirrors these real-world horrors. Lakes of boiling sulfur recall the bubbling onsens of Beppu, while cracks in the bedrock gush flames like the perpetually burning vents of Oyanuma. Even the demons reflect this duality. Some wield hooks forged from volcanic glass, while others wear masks of cooled lava, their faces frozen in the same rictus of agony they inflict. But what makes this hell uniquely cruel is its precision. The fires here don't just burn indiscriminately, they remember. A spouse who spread venomous gossip might find their tongue lashed by tiny, needle-like flames, each jab replicating the sting of their words. A blacksmith who forged weapons for tyranny could spend centuries hammered on an anvil of white-hot iron, the rhythm of their strikes echoing their complicity. The heat doesn't just punish the body, it annotates the soul, branding every sin into flesh like a scroll of indictment. Cultural echoes of Jontsu Jigoku flicker through art and ritual. Medieval scrolls depict it with flames that form kanji-burning curses that spell out the damned's crimes. During the Jin festival, towering lanterns are shaped like hell's fires, their glow a warning against the allure of wrath. Even modern idioms preserve its terror. To carry Jontsu's coals means to nurture a resentment that will eventually consume you. Yet beneath the blistering surface lies a grim redemption. Unlike eternal hells, this inferno has an exit if the soul can withstand the furnace long enough to let hatred burn itself out. That's the paradox of Jontsu Jigoku, it's a crucible. The same flames that sear also purify, reducing vengeance to ash until all that's left is the fragile, scorched truth. That fire, unchecked, devours even the hand that lights it. Japan's landscape breathes fire, a fact that doesn't just shape its geography but its very imagination of damnation. Jontsu Jigoku isn't some abstract nightmare, it's a myth forged in the same molten veins that run beneath the islands themselves. Take Mount Fuji, revered as sacred yet feared as a sleeping giant. Its eruptions weren't just geological events, they were omens, glimpses into a realm where the earth itself could turn against the wicked. When pyroclastic flows buried villages in the Heian period, survivors didn't see random disaster. They saw Enma's hand, the hellfires bleeding into the living world as a warning. This hell's lakes of boiling sulfur, They mirror the Jigoku hot springs of Hokkaido, where steam rises like ghostly breath from cracks in the rock. Even the demons here reflect reality. Their lava-cracked skin echoes the victims of pyroclastic surges, their movements as unpredictable as tremors along the ring of fire. But the connection runs deeper than imagery. Japan's mythology treats volcanoes as literal gateways to the underworld. In the Kojiki, the god Kagetsuchi's fiery birth scorched his mother Izanami so severely she fled to Yomi, the land of the dead, binding fire, death, and creation in one primal tale. Centuries later, Buddhist monks would preach that eruptions were the screams of souls trapped in Jonsu Jigoku, their anguish bubbling up through thin spots in the world's fabric. This wasn't mere metaphor. During the Great Tenmei eruption of 1783, priests interpreted the ash-darkened skies as proof that the hells were overcrowded with sinners from a decadent age. The hell's punishments even mirror volcanic violence with eerie specificity. A soul buried under rivers of molten rock doesn't just burn. They experience the slow, suffocating terror of a pyroclastic flow, the way it encases victims in a coffin of hardening stone. Those forced to breathe scalding steam relive the fate of miners in places like Owakudani, where toxic gases still seep from the earth, and the demons who hurl flaming boulders. Their projectiles arc through the air like the very ejector that once rained on Pompeii. Yet there's a perverse comfort in this hell's logic. In a land where disasters strike without warning, Jonsu Jigoku offers something rare, a reason. If nature's fury could be tied to human sin, then survival wasn't just luck, it was proof of virtue. Farmers who offered rice to Enma at volcanic shrines weren't just praying for mercy. They were bargaining with the flames themselves, acknowledging that fire could cleanse as easily as it destroyed. That duality lingers today. When Sakurajima lights up the night sky, it's not just a spectacle, it's a reminder that the line between sacred and hellish was always thinner than the crust beneath our feet. The seventh hell isn't just hotter, it's alive. Daijonsu Jigoku, the hell of great burning heat, doesn't merely punish. It consumes, its flames shaped by the sins they purify. Here, the fires transcend physical torment. They become manifestations of the crimes themselves. A genocidal warlord doesn't just burn. He's devoured by a conflagration that takes the form of the faces he erased, their screaming mouths opening and closing in the flames around him. A blasphemer who desecrated temples might find the air itself igniting into sacred sutras, each charred symbol branding their skin with divine wrath. This is fire that doesn't just destroy, it replicates, forcing sinners to relive their atrocities from the perspective of their victims. What sets this hell apart is its irreversible logic. While lesser hells allow for eventual rebirth, Daijonsu Jigoku's flames leave scars on the soul itself. In Buddhist cosmology, certain acts, genocide, mass betrayal, the destruction of sacred truths carry a weight so profound they disrupt the very fabric of karma. The fires here don't just burn away sin, they sear its imprint into the soul's essence, ensuring that even in future lives, the damned will carry an echo of their deeds. A monk who sold holy relics for profit might be reborn with hands that blister at the touch of gold. A tyrant who orchestrated famines could spend lifetimes starving, his throat perpetually parched no matter how much he drinks. The landscape itself is a grotesque reflection of these sins. Rivers of molten iron flow upward, defying nature like the inverted morals of those trapped here. Mountains of ash collapse and reform into screaming shapes, mimicking the instability their crimes wrought upon the world. Even the demons differ, silent where others raged, their bodies fused with the flames they tend, moving with the inevitability of a wildfire. Yet within this horror lies a terrible beauty. In Shingon Buddhism, fire rituals Goma use controlled burns to transform offerings into enlightenment. Daijonsu Jigoku inverts this. Its flames are the offering, reducing the worst of humanity to ash so that something purer might someday rise. It's not just punishment, it's the universe's last, desperate act of balance. When the crimes are too vast for ordinary justice, the fire becomes both judge and executioner, a final confession written in light and heat. Daijonsu Jigoku forces us to confront a chilling question: are some sins beyond redemption? In Buddhism, where rebirth offers endless chances for growth, this seventh hell stands as a stark exception, a place where the weight of certain actions strains even karma's boundless patience. The flames here don't just punish, they mark. Souls who committed atrocities like mass murder, sacrilege, or the betrayal of sacred vows aren't merely cleansed by suffering. They're altered, their essence branded so deeply that future lives carry the scars. Imagine a warlord reborn with phantom burns that ache during thunderstorms, or a corrupt priest whose hands blister when touching altar offerings. This isn't cruelty for its own sake. It's the universe's grim acknowledgement that some wounds refuse to fully heal. The doctrine of Anantarya karma, unintermittent karma, explains why. These are crimes so severe they short-circuit the usual cycle of cause and effect. In Buddhist texts, acts like killing one's parents or harming a Buddha create immediate karmic consequences, bypassing the typical ripening over lifetimes. Daijonsu Jigoku embodies this principle physically. Its fires don't follow the rhythmic cycles of other hells. They burn without pause, mirroring how certain evils disrupt the natural order itself. A single act of genocide might unravel hundreds of interconnected destinies, leaving a tangle even rebirth struggles to smooth. Yet within this bleakness lies a paradoxical mercy. Unlike eternal damnation, the branding isn't about endless suffering, it's about memory. The scars ensure the soul never forgets its past, forcing a confrontation most other hells can't achieve. A tyrant who once reveled in power might spend lifetimes flinching at the smell of smoke, their body recoiling from the very element they weaponized. This isn't just punishment, it's a safeguard against repetition. The marks act as karmic alarms, triggering revulsion when old patterns resurface. Cultural echoes of this concept ripple through Japan's folklore. Legends speak of tsumi no shomai, sin stamps, invisible brands left on souls who committed unforgivable acts. In the no play Aoi no Yu, a jealous spirit bears phantom burns from her past life's crimes, her suffering a living lesson to the audience. Even modern legal language borrows the idea. The term mujo, inescapable consequence, describes crimes whose impact can't be mitigated, much like the hell's irreversible flames. What makes Daijonsu Jigoku so unnerving isn't its brutality, but its precision. It doesn't claim evil is inherent, only that some actions fracture the soul so deeply, even rebirth can't fully piece it back together. The fire here isn't vengeful, it's surgical, cauterizing wounds that might otherwise poison future lives. In a faith built on second chances, this hell serves as the exception that proves the rule. Forgiveness has limits, not because the universe is merciless, but because some choices etch themselves too deeply to ever fully fade. Myujin Jigoku doesn't just punish, it erases hope itself. This eighth and final hell isn't part of the cycle like the others. It's a void where time collapses into endless now, where the concept of after ceases to exist. Souls here don't burn or freeze, they unravel, their suffering woven into the fabric of the realm so completely that there's no distinction between torment and identity. Imagine a corrupt emperor who sold his people's lives for power, now existing as a screaming pillar of flesh, his mouth perpetually open but no sound escaping. Or a traitor who poisoned his own family, his body dissolving and reforming in vats of acid, each cell remembering the betrayal anew. These aren't punishments. Their definitions: the damned don't experience agony, they become agony. What condemns someone to Myujin Jigoku isn't merely the scale of their crimes, but their contempt for the very idea of consequence. This is where you find the architects of genocide, the manipulators who turned sacred bonds into weapons, the tyrants who reveled in bending others to their will. The sins share a common thread. They fractured the trust that holds society together. A monk who used his temple to traffic children might find himself flayed by ropes made of their ghostly fingers, each touch stitching his skin back just to tear it again. A judge who took bribes to condemn the innocent could spend eternity buried under the weight of every wrongful verdict, the document's ink seeping into his eyes like poison. Unlike the other hells, Mugen Jigoku has no demons. No overseers are needed when the torment is self-sustaining, a perfect machine of suffering fueled by the souls trapped within it. The landscape shifts to mirror each sinner's deeds, forests of frozen screams for those who silenced others, rivers of molten contracts for oath breakers, rooms that shrink infinitely for claustrophobic torturers. Time distorts grotesquely. A single second stretches into eons of awareness, while millennia pass in the blink of an eye. There's no rhythm, no pattern, just the relentless certainty that this will never, ever end. Cultural whispers of this hell haunt Japan's darkest folklore. In the Konjaku Monogatari, a warlord's ghost pleads for forgiveness, his voice describing a place where the fire has no light and the cold has no numbness. Kabuki plays like Takedo Yotsuya Kaiden hint at it through karmic traps where villains are consumed by their own schemes. Even modern language preserves its terror. The phrase Mugen no Ku, endless emptiness, describes a despair beyond ordinary suffering. Yet within this bleakness lies a terrible warning. Mugen Jigoku isn't just about justice, it's a boundary marker for the human soul. Its existence proves that some actions don't just harm others, they corrode the perpetrator's very capacity for redemption. The fire that purifies in other hells here becomes an eternal mirror, reflecting back the moment a person chose to sever themselves from the web of life. And in that reflection, there's no one left to save. Mugen Jigoku's vision of eternal damnation stands in stark contrast to other religious hells, revealing profound cultural differences in how humanity grapples with the concept of ultimate punishment. While Christianity's hell fires burn without end for the unredeemed, Buddhist tradition typically avoids notions of permanent torment, except here in this eighth hell where the very rules of karma seem suspended. This exception forces us to confront a haunting question. Are some acts so destructive they rupture the soul's capacity for growth? In Hindu tradition, even Yama's underworld allows for eventual rebirth after eons of purification. Ancient Egyptian Juat judges souls once before sending them to fields of peace or annihilation. Yet Mugen Jigoku operates differently. It's not just a place of suffering, but a metaphysical quarantine for souls deemed too fractured to continue the cycle. The debate over redeemability cuts to the heart of justice itself. Islam's Jahannam reserves eternal flames for unrepentant disbelievers, yet even the Quran hints at Allah's mercy potentially reaching into hell. Dante's Inferno frozen center traps history's worst betrayers in ice, but the poet implies their torment stems from refusing divine grace rather than divine rejection. Japan's eighth hell offers no such loopholes. Its eternity springs from the soul's own irreversible corruption. When a warlord skins villagers alive for sport or a parent poisons their own children for inheritance, these acts don't just harm victims, they corrode the perpetrator's humanity until nothing remains to save. Modern psychology echoes this concept in studies of extreme antisocial disorders, where empathy circuits physically degrade beyond repair. Like Mugen Jigoku's damned, some criminals lose the neural capacity for remorse, their moral compass shattered rather than simply ignored. Yet even here, the hell's architecture holds a grim wisdom. By isolating these souls from the rebirth cycle, it prevents their toxicity from contaminating future lives. In this light, the eighth hell isn't cruelty, it's the universe's last act of protection, a cosmic containment protocol for spiritual pathogens. Cultural responses to this idea reveal fascinating tensions. During Japan's Edo period, traveling no troops performed plays where villains escaped Mugen Jigoku through loopholes. A stolen Buddha relic cooling the flames, or a child's posthumous prayer thinning the walls. These outliers suggest even the strictest system harbors whispers of hope. Contrast this with Calvinist predestination or Gnosticism's view that certain souls carry an inescapable flaw, from creation theological cousins to Mugen Jigoku's irreversible state. Perhaps the most unsettling parallel lies in contemporary secular justice. Life imprisonment without parole, the three strikes laws, even death row, all mirror society's instinct that some harms demand permanent removal rather than rehabilitation. When a serial killer's brain scans show no activation in empathy regions, or a genocidal dictator dies unrepentant, we grapple with the same dilemma as Enma. At what point does redemption become a beautiful fiction? The terror and brilliance of Mugen Jigoku is that it refuses easy answers. Unlike fire and brimstone preachers threatening hell for petty sins, this eighth hell reserves its endless void for those who have already damned themselves. Its existence suggests redemption isn't a right, but a fragile possibility that can be obliterated by choice after choice after choice. In the end, the scariest part isn't the punishment. It's the realization that eternity begins long before death. In every moment we feed the worst parts of our souls. The moment a soul crosses into Enma's realm, the air itself seems to tighten, charged with the tension of 1,000 unspoken confessions. Here, judgment isn't a passive verdict but a meticulous reconstruction of every choice ever made. At the center of it all stands the mirror of karma, a towering obsidian surface that doesn't just reflect, it reveals. Unlike ordinary mirrors, this artifact strips away deception, projecting not the face a soul wore in life, but the tangled web of intentions beneath. A corrupt merchant might see his skin peel back to expose ledger lines of greed inked onto his bones. A warrior's reflection could unravel into the screams of those he slaughtered, each face woven into the contours of his own. The mirror doesn't judge, it displays, forcing the soul to witness their life as Enma sees it, raw, unfiltered, and utterly inescapable. Assisting in this unraveling are Enma's most notorious enforcers, Ox Head and Horse Face. These aren't mindless brutes but divine archivists, their hybrid forms symbolizing the duality of judgment, strength tempered by discernment. Ox Head, his horns curving like the scales of justice, carries the ledger of deeds, each page vibrating with the weight of recorded actions. Horse Face, with eyes that see in all directions, holds the whip of truth, its lashes harmless to the innocent but searing against those who resist accountability. Together, they orchestrate the soul's confrontation with itself. A murderer might find Ox Head's ledger flipping to the exact moment their blade struck, while Horse Face's whip coils around their wrist, replaying the sensation of the fatal blow not as the killer remembers it, but as the victim felt it. The process defies human notions of fairness. Enma doesn't tally sins like points on a scoreboard, he maps them. A single act of cruelty might ripple outward, its karmic impact expanding like cracks in ice. A lie told to manipulate a kingdom could weigh more than 100 petty thefts, not because of its scale, but because of the trust it poisoned. The demon's tools quantify this. Ox Head's ledger records not just actions, but their emotional wake, while Horse Face's whip measures resistance to remorse. Souls who flinch from their reflection are guided deeper into the mirror's depths, where their denials take physical form, chains of rusted excuses, walls built from shrugged-off apologies. Cultural echoes of this judgment ritual permeate Japanese folklore. In the Konjaku Monogatari, a thief's encounter with Ox Head unfolds like a courtroom drama, the demon coldly reciting every stolen object while the man's reflection ages with each crime. No masks used in underworld plays often split vertically, half human, half beast, mirroring the moment a soul recognizes its own duality. Even children's games like Kakurenbo hide and seek whisper of this process. The seeker wears an Oni mask, embodying the truth that some things once seen cannot be unseen. Yet within this severity lies an unexpected grace. The mirror doesn't merely condemn, it clarifies. souls who confront their deeds without flinching might glimpse fleeting alternatives, paths not taken, kindnesses overlooked. A warlord could watch his reflection split, showing both the massacre he ordered and the moment he almost spared a child. These fractured glimpses aren't absolution but seeds. For in Enma's realm, even damnation carries a purpose, to ensure the soul understands why it burns. What makes this judgment so harrowing isn't the punishment it leads to, but the precision. Enma doesn't send souls to hell, they choose it step by step through every action that twists them further from light. The mirror merely holds up the map. The demons only point the way, and the 8 levels, they're just the destinations already written in the lines of every palm, the shadows of every unspoken thought. The trial was never in the underworld, it was in the living world all along. Enma's underworld teems with creatures as diverse as the sins they punish, each demon a grotesque masterpiece of divine retribution. At the forefront stand the Oni, those horned titans of muscle and malice, their skin hues ranging from blood red to corpse blue. These aren't mindless brutes but skilled artisans of agony, their clubs studded with spikes that drip with a paralyzing venom, prolonging pain without granting the relief of unconsciousness. Their origin traces back to Japan's indigenous folklore, where Oni were exiled gods turned vengeful, but in Jigoku they've been promoted to enforcers, their brutality harnessed as a tool of cosmic balance. A murderer might find himself flayed by an Oni whose fingers taper into surgeons' scalpels, each incision precise enough to ensure the nerves remain intact for centuries. Then there are the Kasha, feline demons with bodies wreathed in funeral smoke, their claws forged from the very iron used in temple bells. These scavengers of the damned serve a dual role, part executioner, part spiritual recycler. When a soul's suffering reaches its karmic quota, the Kasha descend like wildfire, devouring the remnants of sin to purify the soul for rebirth. But their methods are far from gentle. Their teeth are said to carry the memories of every soul they've consumed, and with each bite, the damned experience flashes of their victims' final moments. A corrupt judge might taste the fear of the innocents he condemned. The flavors sour on his tongue long after his flesh regenerates. More unsettling still are the Jigoku, the human-eating ghosts. Once mortal priests who hoarded temple alms, they're cursed to hunger eternally for the souls they failed to nourish in life. In Jigoku, they're tasked with force-feeding the greedy, molten gold poured down throats that once craved wealth, banquets of rotting meat served on plates of burning coal. Their hollow eyes and desiccated limbs serve as walking cautionary tales, their very presence a reminder that spiritual starvation is the true price of avarice. But not all torturers are monstrous in form. The Nyor slithers through the hell of slanderers, her serpentine body coiled around sinners' tongues, her milk a viscous, paralytic fluid dripping into their mouths to silence the lies they once spread. Her origin story whispers of a woman drowned for false accusations, now transformed into both punisher and perverse guardian, ensuring the wicked experience the suffocation of being unheard. Even the lowest-ranking demons carry symbolic weight. The Gaki, emaciated wraiths with distended bellies and needle throats, patrol the hells of waste and gluttony, their endless hunger mirroring the insatiability they punish. A nobleman who tossed away half-eaten feasts might spend eons chased by Gaki who shriek with the voices of the starving he ignored, their skeletal fingers scraping his skin as they fight for crumbs he can no longer digest. What unites these beings isn't just their cruelty, but their roles as dark reflections of human frailty. Each demon embodies a twisted lesson, the Oni mirror the violence we justify, the Kasha the consequences we outsource, the Jigoku the spiritual debts we ignore. They're not just punishers, they're manifestations of the sins they oversee, made flesh to remind us that every moral failure left unchecked eventually takes on a life of its own. And perhaps that's the most terrifying truth of Jigoku's hierarchy. These creatures weren't just placed here by divine decree, they emerged from humanity's darkest impulses, shaped by centuries of collective fear and guilt. The Oni's rage, the Kasha's hunger, the Nyor-Honor's suffocating embrace, they're not foreign to us. They're what happens when the worst parts of human nature are left to fester, unchallenged, until the universe itself gives them fangs and claws and a purpose. So the next time you dismiss a cruel thought or shrug off a small betrayal, consider this. In Enma's realm, every sin has a face, and one day it might be grinning back at you from the shadows. For all its horrors, Enma's underworld isn't a permanent prison. Even the deepest hells tremble with the faint pulse of mercy. Buddhist tradition holds that no suffering is truly endless. Even the most damned soul carries a spark capable of igniting redemption. But escaping Jigoku isn't about begging for forgiveness, it's about transformation. Picture a warlord who spent centuries drowning in the hell of boiling blood, his screams blending with those of his victims. Over time, the heat doesn't just scorch, it scours, burning away layers of denial until one day, he finally recognizes a face in the crimson waves, not an enemy. A child he slaughtered without thought. In that moment of agonizing clarity, the blood around him cools just enough for a single, gasping breath. This isn't a loophole, it's the universe's grim pedagogy. True remorse can thin the walls between hell and rebirth. The mechanics of escape are as precise as the punishments themselves. According to the Ojoyoshu, a medieval Buddhist text, souls can ascend through three paths: sincere repentance that alters their karmic weight, intervention by compassionate beings like bodhisattvas, or the prayers of the living. Take the legend of Queen Vaidehi, a murderous ruler who, after witnessing her hell-bound fate in a vision, devoted herself to chanting until her crimes dissolved like ink in water. Or the folk tale of the thief Shiro, whose daughter's offerings of lantern oil gradually extinguished the flames licking at his feet. These stories reveal a radical idea: hell's gates aren't locked. They're heavy, and only the weight of genuine change can push them open. Yet redemption is never guaranteed. It demands more than regret. It requires the dismantling of the very patterns that forged the soul's chains. A corrupt merchant who profited from famine might need to fully inhabit the hunger of his victims, not just as pain, but as understanding before his ledger rebalances. This is why some hells feature bizarrely specific tortures like the Hell of Crushing, where greedy souls are pressed under boulders shaped like the coins they hoarded. The torment isn't arbitrary, it's a grotesque workshop where every stone is a chance to finally let go. Cultural rituals encode these beliefs. During Japan's Obon festival, families light mukibai fires to guide ancestors' spirits not just from the Pure Lands but from hell's fringes. The floating lanterns of Toro Nagashi symbolize the transfer of merit, their flames carrying prayers like lifelines into the darkness. Even the act of creating hell scrolls held power. Artists believed depicting a sinner's release could plant karmic seeds for their actual liberation. The most fascinating exceptions, though, belong to the tricksters and rule breakers. Folktales brim with foxes who talk their way out of Jigoku, or clever ghosts who exploit loopholes in Enma's ledgers. In one story, a sinner's loyal dog digs a tunnel from the hell of black rope, its paws bleeding as it chews through karmic bonds. These narratives whisper an uncomfortable truth. The system has cracks, not because it's flawed, but because mercy, however rare, is woven into its fabric. Perhaps the ultimate paradox lies in Mugen Jigoku, the eighth hell's endless torment. Even here, scriptures hint that after kalpas of dissolution, when universes themselves blink out, the worst souls might glimpse a sliver of dawn. Not freedom exactly, but the faintest possibility of beginning again. It's a harrowing hope, one that asks us to consider, if no darkness is absolute, what does that mean about the choices we make while we still have light? This is the unspoken lesson threading through all of Jigoku. The path out of hell isn't hidden or special. It's the same path that leads in except walked backward with eyes wide open, bearing the weight of every step you once took in ignorance. And sometimes, against all odds, that's enough. Enma's stern gaze and the eight hells' gruesome spectacle haven't stayed confined to ancient scrolls. They've slithered into the neon glow of modern screens, evolving while keeping their core terror intact. Take Dragon Ball, where Enma, anglicized as King Yama, rules the afterlife with a comedic twist, his ogre-like appearance belying his bureaucratic exasperation. Here, he's less a fearsome judge and more a harried office worker, shuffling souls between heaven and hell like paperwork. Yet even this light-hearted version carries echoes of the original. His desk is piled with ledgers, a nod to the cosmic accounting of sins. The series even adapts the hells, albeit loosely. Frieza's torment in a cocoon of eternal punishment mirrors the eighth hell's inescapability, stripped of religious nuance but retaining its thematic weight. Video games dive deeper into the mythology. Shin Megami Tensei portrays Enma as a hulking, blue-skinned deity wielding a gargantuan mallet, his courtroom a fusion of cyberpunk and feudal Japan. The eight hells appear as dungeon levels, each meticulously designed to reflect its sins. The hell of Black Rope becomes a maze of pulsating chains, while the hell of Burning Heat flickers with pixelated flames that drain party HP, a clever gameplay metaphor for karmic decay. This series doesn't just borrow, it remixes, blending Buddhist cosmology with dystopian lore. Enma might battle alongside Lucifer or negotiate with the player, his role shifting from judge to faction leader, yet his core remains uncompromising justice rendered in polygonal form. Anime like Hell Girl and Jigoku Shoujo reimagine the hells as psychological landscapes. AI Enma, the titular vengeance spirit, doesn't just drag souls to hell. She offers them a choice, her crimson eyes reflecting the moment they damned themselves. The eight hells here are less physical places and more states of being. A corrupt politician's mind unravels into the hell of screaming, his inner monologue drowned by the voices of those he exploited. This adaptation taps into modernity's anxieties, not fear of divine judgment, but of the consequences festering in our own choices. Even Western media borrows the aesthetic. Supernatural's depiction of hell's bureaucracy owes debts to Enma's court, while games like Hades blend Greek underworld motifs with Japanese hell's tiered punishments. The eight hells' influence is everywhere once you look, from Naruto's King of Hell Summon, a multi-armed monstrosity that judges the fallen, to Demon Slayer's blood demon arts, where techniques like hell viewing force enemies to relive their worst acts, a microcosm of karmic retribution. But perhaps the most telling evolution is in horror. Films like Ju-On and Ringu replace fire and brimstone with existential dread, where curses operate like unappeasable karma. A ghost isn't just trapped in suffering, she's become a hell for others, her rage echoing the Your Honor's suffocating embrace. Modern audiences might not recognize Enma's name, but they feel his logic. Harm perpetuates harm, and some wounds never scab over. These adaptations reveal something profound. Enma's myth endures not because of its fear factor, but its flexibility. Whether he's a punchline in Dragon Ball or a spectral punisher in Hell Girl, his essence remains a mirror held up to our deepest question. When the ledger of our life is laid bare, what balance will we find? The answer, it seems, is always written in flames. From the ceaseless revivals of Takatsu Jigoku to the silent unraveling of Mugen Jigoku, Enma's eight hells form a terrifying spectrum of divine justice, each level a brutal workshop where souls are hammered, melted, and reforged by the weight of their own choices. Enma himself stands as the unflinching architect of this system, not as a sadistic tormentor but as the cosmic embodiment of cause and effect. His mirror strips away illusions, his ledger records every hidden motive, and his demons serve as both punishers and perverse teachers. This isn't just mythology, it's a grand, gruesome thought experiment about the nature of responsibility. What does it mean to truly face the consequences of your actions? Not in the abstract, but scream by scream, flame by flame, until every rationalization burns away. The moral lessons here cut deeper than simple crime and punishment. These hells reveal how cultures grapple with the uncomfortable truth that some wounds can't be healed, only endured. The greedy aren't just fined, they're crushed under the literal weight of their hoarding. Liars don't just apologize, they choke on the words they twisted. Even the structure of Jigoku reflects Buddhist philosophy. Suffering isn't pointless if it leads to growth. That's why the deepest hells aren't about pain alone, they're about irrevocable change. A soul trapped in Mugen Jigoku isn't being tortured. It's become torture, its very essence reshaped by its crimes. Yet within this darkness glimmers a paradoxical hope. The fact that most hells allow eventual rebirth suggests no soul is beyond redemption, only that some paths back are longer and more painful than others. It's a vision of justice that rejects both easy forgiveness and eternal damnation, instead demanding something far more challenging: transformation. Not because a deity demands it, but because the universe itself insists on balance. So what do you think? Does this vision of the afterlife resonate? The idea that justice might be as precise and inescapable as gravity? Or does the sheer brutality of these punishments feel excessive? Maybe you see echoes of these myths in modern justice systems or in the quiet karma of everyday life. Share your thoughts below. After all, these stories weren't meant to just frighten, but to provoke conversation about the weight of our choices long after we make them. Because whether you believe in Enma's mirror or not, one truth remains: in some way we all create our own hells. The question is, how do we keep from getting trapped in them?